Welcome to Love Light with Dr. Jean Marie Farish. Today, we'll show you how to use the spirit of love and self-worth to improve the connections with everyone else in your life. This program is your weekly gift, and it will keep on giving. You'll see. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jean Marie Farish.
Greetings and a hearty welcome, everyone. I hope you're all faring well. I'm Dr. Jean Marie, your Love Light host, coming to you, shining love light into your hearts and homes to inspire, uplift, and empower you to create a life you love. Our show today, Internal Language and Its Effect on How We Think and Feel with Faust Ruggiero, will make us more aware of how we are being, relating, and interacting with ourselves throughout the day. Our internal dialogue can be empowering or disempowering, motivational, supportive, or erode our self-esteem. We can build barriers against ourselves and stay trapped in negative thinking. Buddha quotes, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become. We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think." I love this quote by Faust. Attitude is everything. And all that you do it with love for yourself and all you touch. He says that nothing is impossible if you have an efficient program to help you reach your goals. Faust helps people understand who they are, their power, and offers a cutting-edge, step-by-step program to make changes for a productive, happy, and healthy life. Moreover, practical and real-life action steps are the key to moving forward in our lives. So, why is it difficult for so many people to turn off their heads? Do people actually have conversations with other people in their own minds? And if so, why? How do internal conversations control how we think and behave? Our guest today, Faust Ruggiero, will show us how to empower ourselves by being aware of our internal dialogue and how to change the script. Faust's professional career spans almost 40 years and is diversified and compelling as it has consistently established new and exciting cutting-edge counseling programs in its pursuit of professional excellence and personal life enhancement. He graduated from Mansfield University in 1977 and earned the master's degree in psychology with a dual major in clinical and developmental psychology with a minor in research from Illinois State University. Before entering private practice, he worked in clinics for deaf children, prisons, nursing homes, substance abuse centers, inpatient facilities, and as a consultant for major national and international corporations. He's a published author and a professional clinical trainer. He's an award-winning author of the Fix Your Life Empowerment series based on the Process Life program. And he has a new upcoming book, How to Fix Your Internal Language. So now I'm honored to bring forth Faust Ruggiero on our show today, Internal Language and Its Effect on How We Think and Feel. Faust, welcome to Love Life.
Jean, it's so nice to be back with you again. Thanks for the invitation.
And thank you for being here today on such an empowering episode. And I know in the introduction I shared a little bit about who you are, but Faust, what really inspired your work?
You know, Jean, I get that question a lot. I just love people. I love to be working with them. And when you watch someone make the changes in their lives and they start to become empowered and they're feeling about themselves and their faith increases and all those kinds of things, it's just so wonderful to watch. In our business, you don't always see the finished product because when they're done, they leave. But watching that progression and watching people begin to connect to themselves, that's just a wonderful thing for me to be a part of.
Yes, and you've done such a wonderful job. You spent 4 decades that led you to a profound understanding of mental well-being and all your experiences in private practice, helping people understand their power in a variety of settings. And I just like to share that uh, we share similar backgrounds as a clinician and trainer, professional trainer. I found counseling clients helping them transition from prison to the community in independent living settings, developing life care plans for persons with injuries and disabling conditions, enable me to grow and learn more about myself and my life. And really, as you indicated, witnessing clients' progress from their own willingness to learn and make changes was truly transformative for me. And I always go by the motto, as we teach, we learn.
And it's a great model, and I share that with you as I'm counseling people, and I'm still doing it. You consistently transition and consistently learn about yourself. And the one thing that I learned is that, we don't, I don't think we get to the point where we're ever better than anyone, or we know so much more. I look at another person and they seem to be, deficit in so many areas, but then, gee, I learned something from them. These people who never thought they could teach anyone anything, they're teaching the expert, if you will, about life. It's just it's a wonderful reciprocity that just keeps on growing.
And Faust, I know you may have had similar experiences, but a lot of times on my daily errands, where bookstores or grocery stores or shopping ventures, clients come to me from years gone by and come to me and share how much they've progressed. And, they quote things that I share with them. And I'm like, okay, good. And I say that with humility that, wow, you never know how you're making a difference.
We don't, and it's when you were saying that, I thought to myself, I've had that happen too, and it's nothing that I've thought about. I said, I said that, wow, and that thing help you change your life, and I never even thought much about it. It just tells you how much power we can have, but also how careful and how loving we have to be, because what we're giving to them is something they're going to hold on to. And we want the changes to be very loving, pure changes for them.
Yes, and as you indicated, it's not like we have the answers, but we use our skills and talents, or, our inspiration from divinity to really help us help others and help us help ourselves. And Foss, obviously, you're a good listener. You're evolved in your work in a myriad of settings with people suffering from all kinds of emotional and mental problems, depression, anxiety, anger, prominent in society. I talk about internal language going on in our heads and how this controls how we think and behave, to bring our show title home to our listeners.
Gene, our human brain is a learning machine. I always say that to people. It never stops learning. It doesn't stop thinking. And humans, for the most part, we think with language. So whatever we think, it not only, we can express what we're feeling and thinking, but it can control it, because the way we present that dialogue to ourselves really sets the course for how we're going to live. If we're positive, if we're willing to be positive with ourselves, then of course our opinion of ourselves it becomes enhanced. However, if we decide that internal dialogue is going to be angry and attacking and negative, well, that's the life we live with. And it doesn't matter whether the other person did this or that to me. If I'm thinking about it, I'm experiencing it all the time. So I want people to understand that there are ways to control how you speak to yourself and get rid of that negativity.
Hmm. And also, let's face it, it's so automatic, this internal dialogue. How can we turn off this chatter in our heads? And a lot of times the communication is toxic communication with ourselves that impacts us mentally, physically, emotionally. and spiritually.
Well, you said the key word, Gene, and automatic. I always use the word autopilot. You know,
Mhm.
we don't put conscious thought into what we're doing. When the dialogue starts, very often it's nothing where we said, I'm going to think about this now. It just starts and then it takes off and it often gets into a full-blown conversation. Sometimes we're talking to another person who isn't there. You know, the boss was tough on us at work, or the relationship, we had some problems. Now we're actually talking, we're having that conversation in our head to that other person who's not there. And it takes off. It just starts, and then we don't seem to have a shut-off switch for it. So, you know, it's about learning how to make our conversation a conscious conversation, and to be able to control it in that way. And you know, we want to turn off the autopilot and get in more into the controlled conscious thinking and speaking.
That is so important. Uh, what about these unresolved? Obviously, this constant talk to these conversations we're having with other people in our heads may stem from unresolved issues. Uh, can those issues be positive or uplifting?
Well, and that's the interesting thing. We have a tendency with our communication to ourselves to go negative, to review what didn't work out. I wasn't good enough in this. That person didn't like me. That person was mean to me. You know, all those things aren't working out. We tend to go in that direction rather than saying, you know, I did really did a good job there. I feel real good about that. I think I'll be real good in that type of thing. We don't do that to ourselves enough. We go negative. We review what concerns us, and either we didn't perform well or someone else didn't treat us fairly or the way we want to be treated. You know, we just have to start thinking about, I need to consciously make myself aware that I'm a good person, and I need to compliment myself and be kind to myself when I speak.
And that's really good because we have a tendency to review, relive, and think a lot about the negative. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think research has shown that we really cling on to negative thoughts more. And in the question that I asked you, even if we're getting good and sound, wise advice from others, we may neglect that and move toward, oh, well, they're correcting me. They think they're better than me. We go negative instead of really taking in the good stuff.
Well, you know, Gene, I like to talk to people about the mind-body connection when I do this.
Please
And
do so. Mhm.
what we don't realize is that when we go negative and angry, it raises the adrenaline. The cortisol levels increase. Now the body is engaged in it. That's, you know, people say, well, why can't I turn off my head? I said, well, you're trying to think about it as a mental exercise, and that's fine. Part of it is. But if you think about it, when you're having those angry discussions in your head, when you're going negative, you can feel your body tense. The anxiety starts. Now, body and mind are teaming up, and you're going negative. It's a hard thing to shut off. We don't put quite as much adrenaline into the positive. That makes us feel good, but it's a more relaxing kind of feeling good. So it doesn't have that intense drive the negative language does.
So true. Can you clarify? And it may seem obvious, but maybe to some listeners it's not. Positive and negative thinking, just for clarification, because
Uh-huh.
some people may think, hey, I'm engaging in positive communication when it's really negative. So we have to discern what is positive and what is negative so that we can change the script.
Absolutely, it's a great question. When we talk about being positive, we're talking first about being kind to ourselves. We're talking about being, you know, reinforcing, lovingly reinforcing to ourselves, to other people. It's complimentary talk. It is talk that is designed to make us feel good. And we want it to be realistic. We don't want to, you know, we want to keep our emotions at a minimum if we can. That's the thing about negative. Negative communication tends to be wrought with emotion, with negative emotion. It has a tendency to be angry, to settle scores internally. Sometimes we're tearing people down in our minds. So it's communication that moves us in an angry, negative direction, in a direction that's hurtful, whereas the positive has us going to a more loving, kind direction. And of course the results are going to be so much nicer, so much better for us if we can go positive.
That's so good. And I think there's a quote about from Rumi talking about us building barriers against ourselves. And as you indicated, if we are more compassionate and loving and kind to ourselves, we feel better. And I really appreciate you sharing the holistic aspect of internal dialogue so that we know what we can be more aware of what we're doing to ourselves, right? How we're damaging our body and our emotions. So thank you so much for that.
So, one of the things I tell people is, because people say, well, how do I gauge this? And I say, well, after you've had a conversation, in your mind, you go back and you say, well, how did I feel after that conversation? If it's negative, you felt angry, you felt like in your mind, you settled something with someone. But the other thing you feel is that there's no closure on it. That's the interesting thing about the negative communication. It never has closure. It may be full of past undercurrents of trauma or pain, unresolved issues, things that are happening now that you can't seem to get a handle on. So when the conversation's over, it didn't fix anything, and it's going to come back. Whereas that positive conversation settles things. You feel good. Boy, I felt good about this. This happened, and I'm looking at how I was in that situation. I'm happy with it. Nothing seems to change. I don't want to hurt anyone or yell at anyone, anything like that. The conversation is over, and I feel good. That's the difference. And that's the way you can gauge how your internal conversation is going.
That's really good. It's amazing how, those conversations, as you indicated, lingers with the residual effects. And, I really emphasize the importance of self-introspection and self-reflection, and to take a pause. Don't just be overreactive and, without really taking time to really sort yourself out. But Faust, and to our listeners, it's time for a brief commercial break. And, we really look forward to Faust sharing more about his process, way of life, and the empowering books that really help readers around the world. So stay tuned for more on internal language and its effect on how we think and feel with our outstanding guest, Faust Ruggiero, psychologist, published research author, professional clinical trainer, an award-winning author of the Fix Yourself Empowerment series. And we're going to hear more about his upcoming book, How to Fix Your Internal Language. Stay tuned. We'll return shortly.
Announcing Dr. Jean Marie Farish's new book, Love Mastery Devotion Journal, 21-day weekly prompts and affirmations. This is the companion piece to Dr. Farish's best-selling book, Living in the Spirit of Love, Our Natural State of Being. Through the new book, we invite you to cultivate a lifestyle of love through daily devotional practices over a 21-day period, following 9 ingredients in the recipe of love. Love Mastery Devotion Journal, 21-day weekly prompts and affirmations is available on Amazon.com and Balboa Press.
Jean Marie Farish's Center for Conscious Loving, LLC, cultivates a lifestyle of love and wholehearted connections through personal growth, altruistic services, and speaking engagements. Resources include classes, workshops, life care coaching, and creative service projects with an emphasis on cultural arts. Visit the website at drjeanmariefarish-consciousloving.com. That's drjeanmariefarish-consciousloving.com, or click the link on the Love Light show page.
Best-Selling Authors International news honors best-selling authors around the globe. Dr. Jean Marie Farish is featured in the newly released issue of Published magazine. To have first access to this treasured resource, go to publishedmagazine.com. Vicki Winterton and Dr. Jean Marie Farish have compiled a dynamic book, We're All in This Together, Embrace One Another, an anthology with 24 highly diverse co-authors who share how to spread the message of love, resilience, inclusivity, and compassion. This book is an invaluable source of uplifting, inspiring, and positive insights for spreading positivity in the world. We're All in This Together, Embrace One Another is available on Amazon.com. Be sure to get your copy today. Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
You are tuned in to Love Light with Dr. Jean Marie Farish. Feel free to connect with our program through email or check out our links on Facebook. Reach Jean at Jean72Farish@yahoo.com. That's Jean72Farish@yahoo.com. And now, back to Love Light.
Welcome back to Love Light, living in the spirit of love. And if you're just joining us, we are with our outstanding guest, Faust Ruggiero, psychologist, research author, professional clinical trainer, author of the award-winning Fix Yourself Empowerment series based on his Process Life program. On our show today, internal language and its effect on how we think and feel. And Faust, in this segment, we are open to you sharing some of those empowering strategies to help us with our internal dialogue. And one of the things before we begin, our internal dialogue has a great impact on feelings of unworthiness and how we value ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that as you move into those strategies?
Absolutely, Gene. You know, I talk about something I call an internal persona and the way we feel about ourselves. And that's what we're going to project outward. It doesn't matter, you know, we can try to fake it as much as we want to. What we feel about ourselves in one way or another is going to come out and it's going to be readable to other people. So we want that internal persona, that way we feel about ourselves to be positive. We want to feel good about ourselves. And if we're talking to ourselves with angry internal language, with language that's negative and it's hurtful, then that's an expression of how we feel about ourselves, and it continues to reinforce those feelings. So we want to move away from that, get into the positive communication. So that internal persona, again, that way we feel about ourselves, our self-identity, if you will, is a positive one. And then that's what we take to the external world. So very important, you know, language can kind of communicate how we feel about ourselves, but it can also control how we feel about ourselves. Very important distinction there.
Mm-hmm. So, Voss, please share your enlightening and empowering strategies for our listeners. So take it away.
Okay, let's do that. You know, Gene, that's something I love to get through to people before I even start an action step is that we all think, and we think with language, and all of us from time to time will go a little bit negative. Something happens and we kind of review it in our mind. So the language can go negative. For some of us, language is negative a lot of the time. So what I want people to be able to do in your applying conscious thought, you're doing this consciously. I give them 3 simple steps. I call them the 3 Ds. We're going to disengage, divert, and direct. And let me go into those steps real quickly. It's very simple. If I have a negative thought, the first thing I want to do is to disengage from it. I want to identify that it's there. Okay, now I know I'm caught in this negative thought. To disengage, simply, the first step is simply to say, I am going to stop thinking about this right now. Now, we don't do that. Sounds simple-minded, but we don't do that. We do not say, all right, I got to stop thinking about this. We just continue with the thought until we get exhausted and it seems to go away. So the first step is I'm not going to think about this. The next step then is the where we divert our attention. Okay, if I'm not going to think about that, I'm going to think about this. Now I'm going to put a positive thing. And I always have my people make a list of all the positive people, places, and things in their lives. So I said, go get one of those. And let's think about that positive thing. Let's start that. Just direct your attention there. Third step is to direct your attention and expand on it. So now we have a conversation, if you will, a dialogue going on in our heads that is positive. So I've taken myself out of the negative. I've decided on a new direction, and I've expanded on that direction. What we're doing is training our brain to do something completely different, the opposite of what we've been doing when we were talking negative.
Hmm. Fantastic steps. Disengage, divert, direct. It breaks up the rumination, right? And collection of negative thoughts, because it's amazing how once you have an experience or you think negative about it, you end up collecting all of the past negative thoughts associated with that.
And if you think about it, when let's say we're anxious and we're just having a hard time and our minds are all over, sometimes what people do is say, I got to go get busy. I'm going to start cleaning. I'm going to go outside and wash the car. They do something different. That's essentially the behavioral component of what I'm saying. So that's how you know this works. Mm-hmm. That's what people will do to get their mind off something. What I'm doing is providing the cognitive part of that. The internal part where now you start to gain control of the way you think. Simple steps. I'm not going to think about this. I'm going to think about that instead. I'm going to expand on that. That's just what you did when you pulled yourself out of your physical environment to go do something else. Now I'm just giving the mental component to that. And since we know the physical part of it works, we know now that of course the cognitive part will work too. And again, we're going to be thinking all the time. That's what our brain does. So let's have a strategy to keep us thinking positive things.
And Faust, this is really about managing and regulating our emotions, because when we are reactive and we respond without thinking, whether it's to ourselves and others, words spoken cannot be unspoken, right? So in regulating ourselves, as you're indicating, is so important. What can we do to, because I know negative thinking can be disturbing. How can we take command of ourselves and be more calm, relaxed, and less stressed? Any strategies there? Things we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're back to that body-mind connection.
Okay.
Most of the time, I find that people who are negative thinkers they have negative habits in their lives. One of them, is what they're putting in their body. Negative thinkers are often people who don't eat well, who may put accelerants in their body. Their sleep schedules are not good. Maybe they're sedentary. They're not doing any exercise. The truth of the matter is a healthy body is the first line of defense to have your mind working well. And we don't pay attention to that. In mental health, unfortunately, we've put so much emphasis on what the cognitive part, the brain does, that we push the body down to a secondary position. The body, it has to be healthy for the mind to work well. And so I always get my people to look at what they're doing, their sleep, for example. People tend to gauge how much sleep that is good for them by how much they usually get. And that's not the right way. The body needs around at least 7 hours of sleep. We need the REM sleep. We need to recharge cells. And if you're not getting that deep sleep, you're not going to recharge your cells. When we don't do that, we become more intolerant, I should say. We become more negative. We're just not feeling as good. So it's really the precursor for negative thinking. When we're putting accelerants and chemicals in our body, well, none of that was meant to go in the body. The body now has to work harder to deal with those foods, and it's not getting the nutrition it needs either. We have a lot of people who are dealing with obesity and trying to lose weight, and they're taking medications to do that. So it's also the medications you're putting in your body. So it just spirals out of control. I love for people to get their bodies healthy. It's such a great first step in all of this.
It's that holistic approach. I thought
Yes.
about there's a quote by Lao Tzu. I can't quote it directly, but I think he referenced how our feelings lead to how we think, and our thinking leads to actions, and, that can be unhealthy habits. And you're talking about really, taking good care of ourselves. And that's really loving and caring for ourselves, right? Things we can do. You talked about rest and how to relax, because think about it. There are people who are perhaps tormented before going to sleep, and even in their sleep, they're rolling over all those negative thoughts and emotions.
Absolutely. So we really want to get the body healthy.
Hmm.
The other thing we want to do is we want to have some strategies to calm down, whether it's yoga or it's exercise or it's prayer. When I say prayer to people, say, "Well, how's that going to deal with my internal language?" I said, "Well, most of the time, unless you're praying out loud, your prayer is internal.
Hmm.
Prayer tends to be positive. And most, unless you're angry with God and you're swearing at him or what you do, but for the most part, that's positive. These are all strategies you can use to get your brain in a different place. They promote tranquility in the body and the mind. So these are deceleration techniques. Angry internal communication tends to be accelerated. So decelerating the body, getting the body calm also helps when it comes to that internal language.
Hmm. And uh, I like to talk a little bit about solitude and alone time. There are many people who don't like being alone, and maybe keep themselves busy without being in touch with their internal selves. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, and we have a lot of
You may
people that
fear that. Hmm.
Yeah, we have a
Excuse me.
lot of people that do that, and again, I'm trying to help people train themselves to be
Hmm.
more comfortable with themselves.
Hmm.
People who don't want to get into the internal parts of themselves, if you will, the mind, the spirit, all those kinds of things, are often avoiding going there because it's painful in one way or it's uncomfortable. So it's all about getting yourself to a point that you're comfortable. For some people, they need to go and just talk to someone. You don't have to be social. Maybe you have a counselor.
Hmm.
You want to get that one person where you talk to, you get the thoughts out of your own head, because after a while, it's the old hamster on the wheel kind of thing. You're in your head, you're talking about the same things over and over again. You're not changing what you do or what you think. So having that person you trust, well, again, whether it's someone, a close friend that you trust, or it's a counselor or a coach or whatever it may be, having someone where you can just open up to and have a thought check, because sometimes our thoughts just aren't realistic. Our emotions come in and they can contaminate things. We don't realize that. Having that person to talk to is another thing that helps with the internal language.
And Foss, as a psychologist, counselor in your work, can you talk a little bit about attitudes toward help seeking and perceptions? I know we dealt a lot with that in terms of how people stereotype help, and maybe did not seek help, thinking they will be stereotyped as, unhealthy or whatever. So, as you talk about that, what are some things we need to uh, really look for in seeking out a psychologist or counselor?
The first thing, Gina, I love to tell people is that, the old way of looking at getting counseling or help from someone else is that you're weak and you can't do it on your own.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is, to get to a point where you're understanding that you need some help and then going to do that is a very intelligent decision. It's a mind that says, I need to incorporate some other tools to make some things better. So it's a decision based on strength, not weakness. The weakness is when we decide that we are going to do this all by ourselves and then we continue to make the same old mistakes. That's a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as that old stigma about things, if you're afraid people are going to know you go to counseling, well, you're not going to tell them. They might see you go into the counselor's office. That could happen, but so much of it's done online. So,
Yes.
they're not in your house. They're not watching. No one's watching you do this. You're going to, if you're doing it online, uh, speak to someone in the comfort of your own home and just be able to talk to that person. Again, you're sharing your thoughts. You're getting different perspectives, sometimes some tools that will help you improve the quality of your life.
And Foss, as a counselor, psychologist, we can't, I know we've seen people, we pay attention to the verbal as well as nonverbal type of communication. Many times people can't see themselves by themselves. And I know I've had clients who will come in looking all shabby and down. Oh, how are you feeling today? Oh, I'm just fine. I'm like, that's incongruent, right?
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
matching.
Absolutely. And oftentimes, of course, those of us that are doing the counseling, we're looking at those kinds of things. It's not just what the person is telling me. I'm looking at posture and I'm looking at hygiene and I'm looking at how eye contact and all those kinds of things. And a confident person or person who's being more positive will make eye contact. They're feeling good about themselves. They're taking the time for self-care. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, their posture's good. I'm looking at all those kinds of things. The nonverbal is often, it doesn't provide a wealth of information. It just provides enough for us to look and say, okay, like you said, something's incongruent here. Something is just not, you know, matching what I'm seeing. So I want to question that a little bit.
And the as you and I had talked about earlier about the practical strategies, people want to feel good now. And I know in my practice, I would tell clients, okay, these are things to consider. How about maybe during the next week or whatever, do this or consider doing that, and then they come back, doc, that really worked. So the litmus test is how it makes you feel.
Well, it's interesting you said that. What I often do, kind of call it a psychologist strategy, but what I do to people who are a little bit resistant to change or just having a tough time, but I say, let's just do it for a short period of time.
Hmm.
Give me a couple weeks.
Hmm.
Do this for a couple weeks and then you can go back to doing whatever you want to do. But tell me how you feel when you do this little thing. And of course, you know how this works. We're not going to give them grandiose changes. We're going to give them baby steps,
Exactly.
which is the way the mind works. The mind does not work with major change. It works with small incremental steps. So I give my people those and I say, let's try this, because what we're really doing is retraining your brain. That's what we're doing. If you're talking negative to yourself, you've been training your brain to do that for years. So, the litmus test there is that, well, it works because you've been doing it. But if your brain learned the negative, it certainly can learn the positive. You just have to be conscious and in your thinking, give your brain a quality program that works over time. And that's the other part. None of this happens overnight. This is a training program. It takes a while for your brain to learn, and that's good. Don't be afraid of the time element. Incorporate that into the change, because that's what's going to help you learn.
Foster, so positive, uplifting, and encouraging. And in our next segment, you're going to share more about your Process Life program with our listeners and perhaps, maybe some outcomes or positive stories from your experience. So right now we're up for another commercial break. So listeners, stay tuned for our next segment on internal language and its effect on how we think and feel with our outstanding guest, Faust Ruggiero, psychologist, published research author, professional clinical trainer, author of the award-winning series, the Fix Yourself Empowerment series. And Faust's going to share about his new upcoming book, How to Fix Your Internal Language. Stay tuned. We'll return shortly.
Dr. Jean Marie Farish is proud to announce the release of her new book, Living in the Spirit of Love, Our Natural State of Being, available now at Balboa Press. This book will help you master your life and flourish in love. You'll learn how to become a better and more evolved you. Feel good by making life-affirming choices. Deepen your feelings and expressions of love. Tune in love and sustain the change. And flourish in love and find your joy. Visit BalboaPress.com and search for Living in the Spirit of Love and enjoy Dr. Farish's new book today.
I'm Judy Satori. I'm a spiritual channel and activator of human potential. You might have heard me speaking on the Voice of America on Dr. Jean Farish's show, Love Light, because I've been speaking about the challenges that are besetting all of us right now and how we can surrender but also keep on going. I want to invite you to join my new Facebook group that is devoted to heart-centered connection and unity. Through this Facebook group, you can also join my free access question and answer session with Spirit on the first Wednesday to Thursday of every month. Just search Ascension Community on Facebook to join the group. In this session, I answer questions and transmit energy from Spirit to give you guidance and support. Because life on planet Earth ain't easy right now. And there is so much help from above, from beings of love and light, from multidimensional realities who are actually here with us, wanting to step up and support us. I welcome you to become part of our ongoing group conversation about evolutionary change and how it's affecting us as human beings and affecting our life today. Many blessings to you. You can find out more about me and my work at www.ascensionlibrary.org. Have a wonderful day.
Announcing Dr. Jean Marie Farish's new book, Love Mastery Devotion Journal, 21-day weekly prompts and affirmations. This is the companion piece to Dr. Farish's best-selling book, Living in the Spirit of Love, Our Natural State of Being. Through the new book, we invite you to cultivate a lifestyle of love through daily devotional practices over a 21-day period, following 9 ingredients in the recipe of love. Love Mastery Devotion Journal, 21-day weekly prompts and affirmations is available on Amazon.com and Balboa Press. Best-selling Authors International news honors best-selling authors around the globe. Dr. Jean Marie Farish is featured in the newly released issue of Published Magazine. To have first access to this treasured resource, go to publishedmagazine.com.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are tuned in to Love Light with Dr. Jean Marie Farish. Feel free to connect with our program through email or check out our links on Facebook. Reach Jean at Jean72Farish@yahoo.com. That's Jean72Farish@yahoo.com. And now, back to Love Light.
Welcome back. You've been listening to Love Light, Living in the Spirit of Love. And today we are with Faust Ruggiero, psychologist, published research author, clinical professional trainer, author of the award-winning Fix Yourself Empowerment series, based on his Process Life program that we're going to hear more about in this segment on our show today, Internal Language and its Effect on How We Think and Feel. So, Faust, tell us a little bit about the Process Life program. And I know it takes commitment, it takes dedication, it takes the desire to change, it takes discipline. So can you talk more about your Process Life program and, more about your services and programs and maybe outcomes for some of the clients you've served?
Absolutely, Jean. Everything that I do is our programs over time.
Mm-hmm.
People love quick fixes. Hey doc, can you get this done? And can we do this in 3 or 4 months? And I said, well, it's the old story. It didn't take that long for you to develop these problems. So my programs are programs for life, but that's what we all need. I use it. I use this every day. It's not like I'm
Yes.
above it. So, process way of life is nothing more than using processes like honesty, like how to love yourself. And I tell people how to do that. Things like getting your intellect over your emotions, slowing down life. We talk about things like boundaries and how to set and defend boundaries, all those kinds of things. And when people use them, and the first book really lays all that out, the Fix Yourself Handbook. And when people use them, then they start saying, they'll come back and they'll say, gee, this is really simple and easy to use. Why has no one ever taught it? Well, because we don't tend to break things down into steps for people, because counselors, we can get caught up in trying to accommodate them and go too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is change occurs slowly. But the question I ask people is, how much do you love yourself? How worthy do you feel you are of change? Should you not be willing to love yourself into a good program every day of your life? That's what not only produces change, that's what helps you maintain it. So the process way of life is all these processes that you can use every day of your life, and then build that positive internal dialogue and good feelings about yourself and a productive lifestyle.
And I love that you mentioned honesty. We have to be come clean with ourselves and be honest about ourselves. So, and to really love and care for ourselves, that you highlighted. So I'm glad that you shared that, because that makes an impact on, hey, I feel worthy. I'm worthy of my own love, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the people who make the best changes are willing to say, okay, this is where I am right now. All right. I have to remove some of these things from my life. I have to begin to start doing things, but I have to be able to say, you know what? I'm worth this.
Yes.
It's something I've communicated to people for years. Being worthy doesn't mean you get to some place so you find your worthiness. At your worst, you are already still worthy. You have to understand that you have as much right to a good life as anyone else on the planet. You don't ascend to a level of worthiness. You are already there. Now just take that and begin to retrain your brain and begin to do all the things you need to do that will support that movement into a loving, productive life.
Indeed. And Foss, the Fix Yourself Empowerment series, I think you have your books include the Fix Yourself Handbook, the Fix Yourself Anxiety Handbook, Fix Yourself Depression Handbook, Fix Your Anger Handbook. And can you talk a little bit about your upcoming book, when it will be available, How to Fix Your Internal Language?
Thank you. Absolutely. Those are the first 4 books. We published the Fix Your Addiction Handbook in December, and in June we'll be releasing the new book, the Fix Your Internal Language Handbook. So, we're busy, needless to say.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about support networks, and where people can find support, and any thoughts about resources for selecting counselors or
Sure.
therapists? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If you're in crisis, and of course you can go to your emergency room or call the emergency numbers, but there are numbers online if you just want to get to someone to talk to. Mental health numbers, addiction numbers, they're right online. You just type in mental health support. You can do that. If you are looking for a counselor and you're not sure how to, a real great resource online are the folks from Psychology Today. On their website, you can type in your area and what you're looking for, and they will list all the psychologists and counselors in your area. They will tell you what benefits they take. They'll tell you what their levels of expertise are, what they specialize in. So if you're not sure, that's a great resource. Another way to find a counselor or someone to help you is just to go to your primary care physician, if you have one, and say, Doc, I'm looking for someone to help me, someone to talk to. They often have lists of people in their networks where they can refer you to. So getting a counselor is not that difficult.
And I like to add, I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor, and that's a national network. So you can actually access counselors through that network, the CRCC, Certified Rehab Counselors.
Yes.
Faust, I know you have a lot of exciting things coming up. You have the new book, you have a documentary, TV series. Can you share with our listeners more about your upcoming events?
Yeah, thank you. The new book, as I say, the Fix-Your Internal Language Handbook, will come out in June. That's there. I have a radio show I do on Healthy Life Net once a month, and interviewing guests, just as you do, people that we can incorporate into people's lives to help them make some changes. And then we're now in development. We have a documentary, and what we're doing that one on is trauma and PTSD. We have a fellow who was involved as a person who was at the shooting that happened in Las Vegas. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and he was rescuing people. But then from that, the trauma and the PTSD came. So we're beginning to develop a documentary around what he did in that particular episode, that event, and the PTSD and trauma that almost destroyed him, and how he came back from it. So that's in the works. We're hoping to get that out possibly by the end of the year.
Yeah, Foss, I'm so glad that you brought that up. The residual effects of service providers helping people. We think they leave the scene and it's okay. They've helped people, but gosh, we don't know what they go through. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as a resource.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the old story, Gene. We take care of the world, but we need to take care of ourselves, because if we don't do that, we're not taking care of anyone.
And in fact, as counselors, life care coaches, therapists, we have our own ways of caring and caring for ourselves, and our own networks where we can, just talk about our feelings or thoughts or, things that have happened in our own lives, so that we can keep ourselves, viable to help others.
Absolutely.
Well, as you indicated, Foss, it's not that we're perfect people or we have the answers, because we're living life as well, right?
And I tell them that, I say, when they say, I'm helping them, they say, well, you've got it all together. You don't deal with these things that I do. And I say, would you really want to come to someone who never experienced the difficulties and didn't have to pull himself up from the ashes every now and then? Yes. No, we do. We have some skills that are a little bit different. We've been honing those for a while, and we're smart enough to know that if we need help, we'll go get it.
Exactly. And we have our own resources for, seeking help, or, just kind of mulling over things that we're experiencing, because even working with clients, that can trigger maybe some unconscious things within ourselves as well.
Right, exactly.
Foss, how can people connect with you or talk about your services, or, the online counseling services or programs or whatever?
Gene, the best way to get to me is my website, which is my name, www.faustruggiero.com. There they'll find everything about me. Interviews, books are all there, and as are excerpts from the books, so they can get an idea of what they might be getting themselves into. There's a contact link also, and they can contact me if they want to, and I do get back to people.
Okay. A final thought before we close out.
I would think that the best thing we talked on being worthy, but understand that the world is not going to provide you what you want. Everything you need, everything that you need to change is already inside you. All you need to do is remove the parts that aren't working and develop the parts that you can develop into a more powerful person. Love yourself enough to go inside and give yourself the time to access the strengths that you have. And by all means, have enough faith in yourself and, if you can, in God, to help you through this.
Perfect closing. So, Faust, we really appreciate you being here today on such an empowering episode, teaching us how to be more aware of how we relate to ourselves, how we can be in control of ourselves, and those strategies to disengage, divert, direct, and all those empowering strategies. Thank you so much. And we invite listeners to listen back, share our show with others, and connect with Faust to learn more.
Gene, it's been so nice to talk with you again. Have a wonderful day. God bless.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to close with my excerpt on self-deliverance. Deliverance from ignorance, knowledge, wisdom, divine communion. Illusion, firm grip on reality and truth. Delusion, shed faulty deep conditions, societal beliefs, and propaganda. Bondage, freedom from the prison of negative thoughts. Impropriety, good and wise company. Lack, abundance mindset and gratitude. Unworthiness, reclaim your true self and realize your divinity. Weariness, rest, relax, renew. Fear, dwell in love. Thanks to Faust Ruggiero for this fantastic segment today. This is Dr. Jean Marie, your Love Light host, coming to you from Voice America. And until we meet again, remember, an empowered self is a loving self. And keep your love light shining. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thank you for listening to Love Light this week. Be sure to join Dr. Jean Marie Farish again for another program next Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and noon Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Have a wonderful week filled with love, self-worth, and better connections.